Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. From Srila Prabhupada in America, following compulsion, there will be a temple. Chapter 7. Prabhupada sat in his room talking with Gunarnava about finances. Where are the bills? Prabhupada asked. I'm keeping duplicates, Prabhupada. Gunarnava explained, showing him how he had attached the bills to the vouchers. Tejas is keeping the originals in Delhi. This is just an explanation, Prabhupada replied. I am an auditor. I'm not Isi Bhaktivedanta Swami. Don't you understand? The auditor wants to see the bills, not just to excuse us. Throughout the day, Prabhupada would call in Guru Das, Surabi, Mr. Lahadi, the engineer, even the contractor, Mr. Ali Books. Although the contractor was Mohammedan, Prabhupada requested him, please do a nice job, because this is Krishna's temple. If you work very nicely, Krishna will bless you. Prabhupada assured him that money would not be a problem. He would arrange that $10,000 a month would come from his temples in America until the construction was finished. It will be finished by Janmashtami, Prabhupada asked. Yes, Gurudas said firmly, it will be done. Mayapur, March 1974. While traveling from Kolkata to Mayapur, Prabhupada stopped as usual at the pleasant, secluded mango grove and sitting on a straw mat, took a breakfast of fresh fruits. A group of his disciples and his sister, Bhavatrini, were also present, and Prabhupada saw that everyone received prasadam. He then returned to his car, and the caravan continued to Mayapur. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, Text number 8. Simple verse. Sat Tatra Gagana Tala Udu Patir Iva Vimana Valibir Anupatam Satatra Tatra Gana Tata Udu Patir Iva Vimana Valibir Unapatam. Satatra tatra gaganatala udupatir iva vimanavala virupatam. Amara parivridair avipujyamana pati pati cha varutasha siddha Amara parivridaya abhipujyamana pati pati cha varutasha siddha Amara parivridaya abhipujyamana pati pati cha varutasha siddha Gandharva Sadhya Charana Muni Ganai Upagiyamano Gandharva Sadhya Charana Muni Ganai Upagiyamano Gandharva Sadhya Charana Muni Ganai Upagiyamano Gandha Madana Dhoni Avabhasayam Upasasarpa Madana Dhoni Avabhasayam Upasasarpa Satatra tratra gaganatala udupatiriva vimanavala virunakutam Satatra tatra gaganatala udupatir iva vimanavala virunakutam Amara parivridaya abhipujyamana pati pati cha varutasha siddha Gandharva Sadhya Charana Muni Gana Upagiyamano Gandha Madana Dhrunim Avabhasayam Upasa Sarpa
You don't know where it finishes, you see.
Huh?
You don't know where it finishes, because the line doesn't finish. Shall we read it?
Okay, let's listen. Would you like to try?
What purification?
Sure.
Satatra tatra gaganatala udu patiriva vimana bhavati Bhatta
Satatra tatra gaganatala udupatiriva vimanavala virunakutam
Amara parivijaya abhipujya yamana pati pati charutasha siddha
Amara parivridaya abhipujyamana pati pati cha varutasha siddha
Gandharva Sadhya Charana Muni Ganai Upagiyamano Gandha
Gandharva Sadhya Charana Muni Gana Upagiyamano Gandha
Madana Drunim Avasvasayam Upasasarpa
Madana Dhrunim Avabhasayam Upasasarpa Saha here Lord Brahma Tatra tatra here and there Gaganatale under the canopy of the sky.
under the canopy of the sky.
Udupati,
Udupati,
the moon.
the moon.
Iva,
Eva,
like.
like.
Vimana Avallipi, in their different airplanes. Anupatam,
Anupatam,
along the path.
Anupatam,
Amara,
Amara,
of the demigods.
the demigods.
Parivridhai,
Avivitai,
by the leaders.
by the leaders.
Avipujyamana,
Avipujyamana,
being worshipped.
being worshipped.
Patipati,
Adipati,
on the way,
on the way.
one after another.
One after another.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Varutasha,
Varutasa,
in groups.
groups.
Siddha,
Siddha,
by the residents of Siddhaloka.
by the residents of Siddhaloka.
Gandharva,
Gandharva,
by the residents of Gandharva Loka.
by the residents of Gandharva.
Sadhya,
Sadhya,
by the residents of Sadhya Loka.
by the residents of Sadhya.
Charana,
Charana,
by the residents of Charana Loka.
by the residents of Charana.
Muniganai,
Muniganai,
and by great sages.
and by great sages.
Upagiyamana,
Upadiyamana,
being worshipped.
being worshipped.
Gandhamadana,
Gandhamadana,
of the planet where the Gandhamadana hill is found.
of the planets where the Gandhamadana is found.
Dronim,
Journey,
the border.
the border.
Avabasayan,
Abhasa,
illuminating. Upa Sasarpa,
Upasasa,
he approached.
he approached.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. As Lord Brahma descended on his carrier, the great swan, all the residents of the planets named Siddhaloka, Gandharva Loka, Sadhya Loka, and Charana Loka, as well as great sages and demigods, flying in their different airplanes, assembled within the canopy of the sky to receive Lord Brahma and worship him. As he received respect and adoration from the residents of the various planets, Lord Brahma appeared just like the full moon, surrounded by illuminating stars. Lord Brahma's great swan then arrived at the border of Gandhamadana hill and approached Prince Priyavrat, who was sitting there. Responsibly, please. As Lord Brahma descended on his carrier,
As Lord Brahma descended on his carrier,
the great swan,
great swan,
all the residents of the planets,
all the residents of the planets,
named Siddhaloka,
Siddhaloka,
Gandharva Loka,
Gandharva,
Sadhya Loka,
Sadhya,
and Charana Loka,
and Charana,
as well as great sages and demigods of the sky,
assembled with the canopy of the sky,
to receive Lord Brahma and worship him.
to receive Lord Brahma,
As he received respect and adoration
as he received respect and adoration
from the residents of the various planets,
from the residents of the various planets.
Lord Brahma appeared just like the full moon,
Lord Brahma appeared not just like the full moon,
surrounded by illuminating stars.
surrounded by illuminating stars.
Lord Brahma's great swan
Lord Brahma's great swan
then arrived at the border of Gandhamadana hill
then arrived at the border of Gandhamadana hill
and approached Prince Priyavrat,
and approached Prince Priyavrat,
who was sitting there.
who was sitting there.
Report. It appears from this description that there is regular interplanetary travel between the planets of the demigods. Another significant point is that there is a planet covered mostly by great mountains, one of which is Gandhamadana hill. Three great personalities, Priyavrat, Narada, and Swayambhuva Manu, were sitting on this hill. According to Brahma Samhita, each universe is filled with different planetary systems, and every system has a unique opulence. For example, on Siddhaloka, all the residents are very advanced in the powers of mystic yoga. They can fly from one planet to another without airplanes or other flying machines. Similarly, the residents of Gandharva Loka are expert in musical science. and those on Satya Loka are all great saints. The interplanetary system undoubtedly exists, and residents of different planets may go from one to another. On this earth, however, we have not invented any machine that can go directly from one planet to another, although an unsuccessful attempt has been made to go directly to the moon. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavasya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitantam Sajivam Sadvitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamshcha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vatsari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukha Karachala Chalam Pangum Nagayate Kirim Yetripata Muhammadin Shri Guru Dimukha Krishna 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 Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityananda Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharya Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshata. So the translation again. As Lord Brahma descended on his carrier, the great swan, all the residents of the planets named Siddhaloka, Gandharvaloka, Satyaloka, and Charanaloka, as well as great sages and demigods, flying in their different airplanes, assembled within the canopy of the sky to receive Lord Brahma and worship him. As he received respect and adoration from the residents of the various planets, Lord Brahma appeared just like the full moon, surrounded by illuminating stars. Lord Brahma's great swan then arrived at the border of Gandhamadana hill and approached Prince Priyavrat, who was sitting there. So here we see Lord Brahma appearing to help the situation. When there was a necessity for a king to rule the world. However, Prince was detached. He didn't want to take responsibility for ruling the world. He didn't see the point to do it because he just wanted to absorb himself in Krishna consciousness. And he therefore went to this Gandhamadana mountain just to meditate. He kind of, in one sense, he disobeyed the order of his father, and he decided just to dedicate himself to Krishna consciousness, like directly just meditating on the Lord. So, because the universe needed, or the whole world, I can't remember what is the scope of the work that he had to do, but it was more or less emperor of the world, I believe. So the world needed somebody to rule it, and he was the most qualified person. So Lord Brahma was invited, or he decided himself to get involved to help the situation. And as you can see, it's a very, very powerful personality, Lord Brahma. You appear there with all demigods, with entourage, receive the proper worship, and is compared to the moon. Udupati in Sanskrit is called the moon. So it's described that the moon reflects the light of the sun. So even Lord Brahma is considered the most powerful personality in the entire universe, and he is considered like a moon. Moon is much kind of brighter, illuminary in the sky in comparison to the stars. According to Vedic literature, stars are also work on the same principle as the moon. They reflect the light of the sun. So even Lord Brahma was the highest luminary in one sense among all those other great personalities present there. He is still a person that reflects the light of the sun. So if we can compare Krishna as the sun, so Lord Brahma is empowered by Krishna. He's not the main luminary, he's a secondary creator. He reflects the light of Krishna, the ability of him to give the light and to rule entire universe is because of this power of Krishna. So even the most powerful personality in this material world is not independent. He is fully dependent. He is reflecting the light of Krishna, reflecting the mercy of Krishna in this world. And when he was taking up this post, there is this prayers, I believe in third canto, of Lord Brahma's prayers for empowerment to be able to create. So even if there's such a powerful personality, he's got 4 heads. So like often, for us, it's difficult to handle one head. Anybody's got that experience? To handle one head is not so easy, it's so hard. Our minds are so active in this age, our mind is so disturbed that it's like one head and one mind is difficult to handle. So to speak, if we have a family, it's a wife, or husband, you try to manage 2 heads, and then you have 2 kids as well, so that's like a 4 to handle. It's very, very hard. In this age, is described that in the age of Kali, if you are able to somehow or another handle a family situation, it's considered like a very successful, great personality. Because you are handling 4 minds. So imagine Lord Brahma. I guess he still has a one mind, despite of the fact that he's got 4 heads. But how does it work? It's difficult to say. How those heads, in one sense, they have a certain independence and different facial expressions, and how they speak, etc. It's like a super powerful personality, but he is able somehow or another to handle all that situation. He's an extremely powerful, great person. However, he still doesn't think himself independent. Of course, at times he loses a little bit that awareness, because that can happen, to anyone, and the Lord Brahma is exemplifying that you can lose the track or go a bit off track. However, he still comes back on a track. After Rama Vimohana Leela, for example, when he got bewildered by Krishna, he was trying to show his power in front of Krishna. He stole the cowherd voice for for just a moment, actually, according to his calculation. And when he came back, the cowherd was there. So Krishna has tricked him. He expanded himself in exactly the same form, same shapes, same character. Everything about every single cowherd boy that was missing, every feature, every voice, absolutely everything was totally identical. How Krishna is expanded and how those cowherd boys acted and how they interacted with their moms and dads. They just couldn't recognize the difference whatsoever. So Lord Brahma wanted to show a little bit of his power in front of Krishna to test him, but is considered, I believe, in that section of the Srimad Bhagavatam and in the Krishna book. Prabhupada compares this ability and the power in front of Krishna is like well, how this bug is called that shows a little bit of light in the night? Glowworm. Yeah, so it's like a glowworm. It looks like a super cool in the darkness of night, but in the daytime the sun illuminates everything. The glowworm has no potency. Of course, Lord Brahma, it cannot be in one sense compared with that, but it's just to show how that great is Krishna and how all powerful light of Krishna illuminates all directions. And Brahma or glowworm is just giving a little bit of light and then give some light in the darkness of this material existence. And Lord Brahma is giving that light. It's compared as a moon. But still, despite of the fact that the moon is there in the sky, still the night is dark. Even if the moon is, when you have a full moon, the light is there, it has a cooling effect, etc. However, it doesn't illuminate all directions like the sun. You cannot be compared really. So in that pastime as well, Lord Brahma was trying to show, how great he is, and he was completely defeated by Krishna, by Krishna's power. So this all-powerful supreme being of the universe, Lord Brahma, he is praying in that prayer for creative impetus. That chapter is called. He's praying, he's begging for Krishna for the power to create. He has that desire. So Krishna empowers him for creative power, for managing the universe. But he is humbly praying. He's humbly praying, please don't let me become bewildered by that power that you are giving to me. So like, Lord Brahma or the moon could become proud, look how illuminating I am. I'm giving a cooling effect to everyone. However, that light, where is it coming from? It's coming from the sun. The ability for the moon to give any kind of light and for the stars, according to medical literature, is because of the illumination of the sun. So therefore, any light, any power that we may be given, in terms of our service, or any power that exists at all, in this material existence, in terms of, we see there is rulers of the country or the city, there is governments, there is city council, etc., village council, etc. All those different posts and places are there. It's just a little spark of Krishna's splendor. Somebody performed some pious activity in a past life, and they had this desire to rule. So they are getting a certain post, it is a big, small, and bigger, or the whole president of the country. And of course, we have to offer our respect to this post. It is significant that we offer that post to the authority, and even we have in the age of Kali some really even like. And I can't find the words to describe it, but even some things are quite ridiculous or even funny or very sad. what is going on in the world in terms of leadership. Is, greatest need in the world today is this enlightened leadership. It's very, very difficult situation, and the pandemic showed, how weak is our world leadership in many ways. Of course, in Scotland it did a little bit better, but generally it was quite a fiasco across the world how the situation was handled. We won't get too much into that. So there is certain respect that we have to offer, to the posts that are there. At the same time, we need to understand, and learn, about Vedic leadership. And it's described actually in the Manu Samhita that the leadership of, or each age, like we have Akali, Satya, Dwapara, all those different ages, that mainly how you can describe and what defines the quality of the age is what kind of leadership we have. What kind of leadership we have. So the qualities of age manifest through the leadership according to Manu. So whatever qualities in the leaders and how this manifests in the world is according to the age, the qualities of the age manifest in the leaders, and due to that leadership that is there, it manifests in various ways. In the age of Kali, manifests in very sad ways. And as we can see, all the suffering that people experience often is due to the quality of the leadership, and the leadership therefore takes 1/6 of the karma of the subjects, of the people who are working under them. And so it's very responsible post, and at the same time you get a lot of reaction for misusing and abusing it. And also, the quality of life is in the country is experienced through the quality of the leadership, and at the same time it happens in a smaller scale as well in terms of the city. Some cities we can see are managed in a better way, and some cities in a worse way. Some cities may be flourishing due to better leadership and management, and some cities are not so doing so well, and it works as well in the smaller companies, in the company leadership and in families, etc., etc. So we can change, and we also learn that we can become obviously purified, uplifted, and change the quality of the age in the sense that like a golden age is coming due to Lord Chaitanya's mercy that started 500 years ago. So the quality of the age will develop and improve as the quality and purity of the leadership develops as well. And of course, everything starts, from each and every individual to take up this process very, very seriously. It's a great responsibility that we take this very, very seriously, become purified and cleanse our heart, so that we act and lead in whatever small way, we can lead. First thing, we have to become a leader of our own mind. It's described again in Srimad Bhagavatam that unless we are able to control our mind, there is no question of any stronger, sustainable, and powerful leadership. The first and foremost thing for that is ability to control our own mind and senses, and that is also recognized in the modern management as well as emotional management, that you're able to manage your own emotions is considered one of the most important things in order to gain, command respect, because it is obviously demanding respect, and we have to, no matter whether it's a command or demand, one way or another, we have to offer respect to the leadership. But it's speaking about our own development, our own personal Krishna consciousness, that we need to be able to control our mind and senses. So it's self-management is one of the most and foremost things. First to establish that, and that is done again, as Lord Brahma was praying for impetus for creation. We are not independently self-managers, but we need the mercy of Krishna. We need to study the Shastras. We need to sharpen our intelligence to be able to master our mind by the mercy of Krishna. We need, have the dependency on Krishna to be able to do it, and we need to use the power of mantra as well. That connection and purification that comes, and the clarity that comes in our minds, then be able to control our mind and senses and emotions. So that self-management is the foundational principle. And then we are able to, deal with other people in a more better and more inspiring ways, set a good example through this self-management, and people then will be more inspired to follow us and follow our example if we have this a good example and cultivate our character, and we are able to manage our emotions in a difficult, trying circumstances. That especially is challenged when there is provocation, and then it's like we get tested when there is a provocation, and how we manage those situations. But obviously, this very important principle is that any Shastric knowledge and learning that we gain, we need to apply to ourselves. It's not that we just judge that every single person, according to this, or this person doesn't fit the Shastric understanding, so I reject them, or I criticize them, or neglect them. It's not the way how the Shastric knowledge should be received. Is to be applied towards ourselves, and if we judge other people, whether they are, sincerely engaged in devotional service, chanting 16 rounds, following 4 regulatory principles, that is sufficient to appreciate everybody else. But the Shastric education that we receive is meant for our own education. So, in one sense, so starting from leading ourselves, managing our mind, and then there is a various responsibilities we may be given, managing our own family, the kids, and whatever, working with another devotee, even in the teamwork, all those things become important. I can be an inspiring person to the person that we are working with. It's one of the most powerful educational ways. Is example is better than precept. You can speak so many lectures, etc., but are we practicing what we speak, and we living it, are able to apply this in various type of circumstances? It's a challenge, and the same for me. I'm giving this class, but I'm preaching to myself and trying to listen and learn at the same time, and to remind ourselves so very far away so from what is supposed to be. So it is education. So we need to know what is the aspiration, and we need to speak about it. And that helps us to establish like a higher aspirations in our life. That's something that we can work and build towards. So we need to hear as well some high aspirations and targets that we can aspire for. So this is going to be a very interesting chapter, going through all those different points. It's will be very educational for us, and we can see, we will see how Lord Brahma, who is the highest authority, is approaching a prince, and we'll see the etiquette of their interaction and how it's all working. So it will be very educative. So another interesting point about accepting Lord Brahma is this interplanetary travel. That's also quite interesting point. There's this word Vimana, which means airplane. So this is like a 5,000 years old literature, and we hear about airplanes in the Vedic literature described. So some people may have a doubt, and how this is possible. This is really is this allegorical stories that we hear. Is it true that there was some airplanes and etc. But it doesn't require a massive leap of faith to accept this. For example, just the Sanskrit language, which is the oldest language in the world, is considered the most advanced and complicated language on the planet. And the modern languages could be considered like a primitive. Sometimes we look back into history and we see, or we go to the jungle and we see, people interacting in very, simple, like screaming and doing some fire and the smoke and doing some drumming and in that way communicating, so in one sense, some of the modern languages from the point of view of Sanskrit, I don't want to sound like very dismissive or anything, to put it on Aboriginal level. Sometimes you could, to some extent, if you compare Sanskrit with the modern languages, it's like a different league. Sanskrit is an own league. It takes like 12 years just to learn the grammar, while to the school, the first 4 years are dedicated to the grammar, usually, and then you learn the A, B, C, D, and etc. But just in Sanskrit, it takes 12 years just to learn the grammar. This is the next level. So it's just a few things, and in terms of what we are in the modern world is discovering the potency of the Vedic practices like yoga and types of meditation, the effect, the benefit it gives to the mind and the body and the well-being, etc. Nothing can match it. Nothing can match it in terms of modern ways of dealing things. Like I was reading a little bit about Pilates recently, and it's just like on coherence. And Pilates is just like some sort of exercise that's been developed by some German, I believe, person, but it's nowhere near in terms of the well-being that in coherence with the yoga, which is such a scientific process that is there in a very literature. So anything we take from this literature is phenomenal. Ayurveda is becoming more and more appreciated as well. It's just a phenomenal in terms of how potent, how good it is in terms of physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually as well. The spiritual wisdom is so profound and so elaborate and so deep. So we shouldn't take that it is a massive leap of faith to accept that there was airplanes in those times as well. And even if you just look in a little more modern history, when you see pyramids, massive, each block I think is 1 or 2 tons, and it's just a few thousand years ago. It still remains a mystical how it was moved. I think it's not a massive leap of faith that ancient civilizations were there and they had some very high understanding. We can accept that there was airplanes, and as we study this knowledge, as we apply this knowledge, we can get that strong conviction and even realization that these things are not just real, but is absolute truth. It's the absolute truth, and if we can apply and live according to this absolute truth, we can experience this very profound well-being and also realizations and purification, change of consciousness. As our consciousness expands and our hearts becomes purified, we see things far beyond uh, what we can see now. Just like a ant, he sees a certain reality in a certain way. He's looking for his sugar. He knows where is the anthill. He's got certain ways of communicating, going places. But it's far human beings' experience of reality is far superior. So, the difference is the consciousness, the ant's consciousness, the human being's consciousness. So even if you look at our own consciousness and how it changes as we progress in Krishna consciousness, we cannot even imagine what does it mean to have a pure consciousness and how we perceive reality in an absolute truths and sense, and how we see different energies of God, of Krishna acting, and we can perceive them in a higher ways. So speaking about interplanetary travel, even the change of our consciousness is an interplanetary travel. Sometimes we get this expression, he is on another planet, or she is on another planet. Because it is, in one sense, the reason we use this expression is because of the consciousness and how the person perceives the reality and its surroundings and that kind of thing. Yeah, so sometimes, as we become purified, it's like a coming from another planet. We live in this little bubble of existence, sometimes not even aware of the surroundings, or not aware of how other people feel or think. We just like so self-absorbed, and we just live in this another planet in one sense. So one kind of interplanetary travel is just to become purified and become severe, conscious of our surroundings and conscious of what's going on around us, how other people are feeling, how other people are thinking, and expand in that sphere of compassion towards other people, and increase our awareness more and more and more. That we are fully aware of Krishna and the message and how the Krishna is speaking to us, to other people, the messages that we're getting from the things that we need to work on, and etc. It's practically interplanetary travel. Sometimes we want to conquer the whole universe. As we read, Prabhupada, when was written Srimad Bhagavatam, there was they haven't even attempted to fly to the moon yet, or maybe they weren't successful at that time. But what about the conquering the inner space? What about the inner planet, not interplanetary, but interplanetary flight inside, making that connection, making that flight inside of us, seeing the things that we need to work on, working, taking the process seriously for self-purification. Sometimes we do so much work externally, but we neglect internal work. And sometimes it can go for decades that we're doing so much external work, but we neglect internal work. We just so self-absorbed of what other people are doing or what other people are not doing. But it's not Krishna consciousness is to become conscious of Krishna, and not to become aware of the lack of other people Krishna consciousness. And when we become so absorbed in the lack of other people Krishna consciousness, then we start that is the very lack of Krishna consciousness, by becoming absorbed in the lack of other people Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop here. Are there any questions and comments? Response, just like 1 minute.
I just would like to exchange some or share some thoughts. You said that the ministers or the leaders of the country, sometimes they used powerful mantras, and then I was considering about the Western world, Europe and America. When will that be happen? That the leaders of the country use powerful mantras. Because the Krishna consciousness movement is quite young, 50 years. And how long might it, how many years will it take that the ministers or presidents of the country, the leaders of the country use mantras from the culture?
Yes, it's just it's as many years as we become very strong as a movement, as we take advantage of what we've been given in that many years. Because we've been given this very powerful process. And at one point, I think there was some question about ruling the whole world or something. There was Srila Prabhupada, there was a discussion. It was Prabhupada was debating something, etc. And I think the question came up like, is there a person who could rule, take charge of the world? And Prabhupada said, I think in a very humble way, that he was the only person who could do it. But it's not, as we see in a sense of Lord Brahma, it's not possible to rule properly unless you take shelter of God. There will be, no matter how expert you are, there will be some problem, and there may be some temporary improvement, but in the long term, it will not be possible. So it requires, empowerment of God and purity of the heart, because empowerment won't properly come if our heart is contaminated, with anger, greed, lust, etc. It's just not gonna work. So yeah, that's the thing, how long it will take. Of course, we have now very, very advanced devotees in this movement, no doubt, pure devotees, but it's just increasing the number, increasing the number. So that's the question of time. I'm sure it will happen in not such a distant future. But really, Prabhupada emphasized that, I was thinking a lot about this boiling the milk. The Prabhupada said, at some point, there were so many devotees in the movement was expanding like anything. And they said, Prabhupada said, now we have to boil the milk. So the boiling the milk means it's evaporating and becoming thicker and thicker and thicker, and it becomes like a thick nectar, burfi type of thing, sweet and thick, burfi. Or if you're just adding more water to the milk, it's becoming more and more watered down. So that's kind of work is very, very significant. I feel for us now, is to really, really boil the milk as a movement, that it become like a thick and strong, thick in the sense of, not watered down, but strong devotees in this great sweetness of the burfi, experiencing this higher, strong taste. And that will, change, make our movement very strong, help the planet. We can't do so much help, and struggle ourselves. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Prema. Hare